Bienvenido. If you are able, please share this show with a friend, leave us a nice review on the podcast player of your choice, or if you'd like to support us financially, sign up for the companion podcast, The St. Nicholas Project, on Gum Road. All these things really help us out. Namaste.
Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
The World's Fair. The World's Fair. The World's Fair. The world is fair. The world is fair. Why were there so many orphans? Why were there so many orphans? Why were there so many orphans? Tell me, my friend, if you can, why were there so many orphans in our barren land? Good morning, Oliver Twist, and good morning, Pip. Good morning, Mowgli. How do, Cosette? Heidi, Rapunzel, and Pan. How goes Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn? And Anne of Green Gables? Was she not an orphan too? Why were there so many orphans? My dear, what do we do? Did you ever think about how strange it was that the Hindenburg was caught on camera? Good morning. How are you today?
Well, good morning. I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm a little sick. I think I have Epsilon variant.
I'm sorry. It's going around.
I have Epsilon. Yeah, and it's making me sniffle.
Yeah.
I've had the sniffles for like 2 days.
For a few
days.
This
is going to be a sniffle show.
Oh.
Which is a problem because I got a new microphone, which I think helps overall.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Quality.
Yeah.
Of the show sound.
Yeah, especially when you remember to record your voice locally.
Oh, I need to do that. Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me turn that on. The problem is that the new microphone picks up like everything.
Mm.
Like every sound. So I don't know what to do about it. It's got these knobs on it that like have shapes. Like one is like two intersecting circles, and one is just a circle, and one is like a cardioid heart shape, and the other is like an infinity sign. And it says those are the different patterns, but I can't tell which one is best for not picking up every single sound. So I don't know. Here we are. How do I sound now?
I mean, you sound like pretty good, but you have the sniffles.
I know. Pattern. Yeah, I need like an audio engineer to tell me which pattern to use. I've also got a gain knob on it. And the first time I tried to use it, I told you I couldn't hear you because it has a. This is a weird microphone where like the headphones plug into the microphone, which I'd never seen before. And it has a mute button, and I can mute my own hearing, and I didn't know that. But the mute button is on the back of the microphone, so when you grab it to move it, sometimes you mute yourself, or you mute your hearing anyway.
If you had an audio engineer, I bet he would say to put it on the cardioid pattern.
You think so? You think that's better?
I think so.
Here we go. Click. It's gonna be 2 clicks. You ready?
All right.
2 clicks. How's that sound? Is that better?
It sounds good. Much less, ambient noise.
Much less ambient?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I got Epsilon. It's not as bad as Delta, which killed everyone in India and Pakistan, and is now the primary danger to vaccinated individuals from unvaccinated individuals who may kill them, but even though they don't die themselves. It was like, first of all, it was like, hey, listen, unvaccinated people are all going to die of COVID. And now it's like, listen, unvaccinated people are going to kill us.
Right.
With the thing that doesn't work anymore against this thing. And if they don't get it, it's very dangerous for us, even though we are vaccinated. Somehow they're not going to die. They don't die. They continue to just live and be a threat to us. So that's not the one I have. I have the one that makes. I have the one that has been going around for a long time, which they used to just call a cold. But now they decided. It was something else.
Yeah.
Did Bezos go high? Really? Did he really go high? Maybe.
Well, they said he crossed the Kanman line or whatever that's called. The agreed upon border to space.
Which is a made up arbitrary spot in the sky. But my point is, it was. Have you looked at the numbers they say?
I have looked at them. I watched the thing, but I didn't really scrutinize it. I mean,
okay.
As he boarded a giant penis to fly into space, I just sort of chuckled from there.
Yeah, he had a giant penis to go to space. Okay, and then he went exactly. They said they claim, like when they give you the numbers, exactly to the 0 point, 69,000 feet higher than Branson did.
Oh, in
now,
your face.
Well, here's the thing. Is it a coincidence that his giant dildo went 69,000 feet higher than the guy from the company Virgin?
I see where you're going there.
Right, and also Bezos supposedly went 351,210 feet in the air, which is, of course, like 66.6 miles.
Really?
In the sky. It's 66.517. I think he missed his target by like a few feet. Like he was trying to get up there to do the 666 thing, and it just barely, So I don't know. It's a little too on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't. It's not like, and it's also like if that's the best they can do is go, because like I said, that's like you're still in the ballpark of weather balloons.
Right.
Like some weather balloons can get up around 20 or 30 miles. They're like basically 2 or 3 times higher than that.
Right.
And that's what the richest guy in the world can do. And supposedly, like 60 years, they went to the moon. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we're really supposed to be excited about Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Branson, doing their space stuff. But
they're not doing anything.
Well, we've been doing this since the 70s. What's the big deal? Or the 60s? Like what? Why are we excited about this like it's new? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
Well, I don't think most people are. I think a lot of people just mocked Jeff Bezos the whole time.
Well, good. I mean, I guess my question, better formulated, is why are we expected to be excited about this? Are they just marketing their tourism services?
Well, yeah, but they were. It wasn't. Was it Branson? Mm-hmm. It may have been. I don't know. I think it may have been Virgin Galactic. Has been selling tickets to go to space for like the past 15 years.
Oh yeah, he's got to deliver on that, huh?
He sold them like 15 years ago,
wow.
And then they were like, "We're never, our thing crashed," and blah blah blah. Some people have been holding on to those tickets for 15 years.
Wow.
They paid I think $200,000 something for them each.
Ooh.
And they're not going to space. No one's going to space. I mean,
So you don't think they went to space at all?
I mean, they went high,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know that counts as. It's not what most people think of going to space as like.
So that was suborbital space flight.
Yeah,
Sort
I
of.
think you have to be in orbit for me personally for it to count as going to space.
Right.
I mean, just going up a little higher than a weather balloon and coming down.
Well, they apparently experienced weightlessness, which you don't even really need to leave the atmosphere to do.
Well, yeah, and also they're I don't know. When you watch I don't want to get too conspiratorial on this show, obviously. That's not what we do.
No, we're pretty straight shooters.
I'm just saying, didn't it when it goes up, when that rocket went up, didn't it go up? It went up pretty slow.
I mean, it's kind of hard to tell just from video, you know.
Almost like it was just a balloon.
I did think that first shot, the drone shot of Bezos's rocket leaving the launch pad that was shot from above, looked pretty fake. I mean, I'm not going to claim it was fake, but
me neither.
Somebody needs to do something about how fake everything looks.
The Elon Musk one a few months back where he had the rocket that went up and came back down.
Mm-hmm.
That looked like something made in like Kerbal Space Program.
Yeah.
That was the fakest looking thing I've ever seen. Now maybe it was real, but it did, in his own words, you can tell it's real by how fake it looks.
Right. That's getting to be a problem. And I don't know if like we were talking about on the last show how the bandwidth or the bit rate is so good. You know, the resolution is so good on modern entertainment that you can't tell the real from the fake anymore, / everything looks fake, at least to people of a certain age. Maybe it didn't look fake to young people.
Yeah, but young people are stupid.
Well, I mean, good point.
And they believe... well, I don't know. I mean, a lot of TikTok people know that Helen Keller was fake, which is good. That's a good development.
That is good.
I've seen a lot of TikTok people, the TikTok girls being on there being like, Helen Keller's fake. It's so stupid. You can't write 12 books when you're blind and deaf. How do you even know 12 languages? Languages written is either oral or written down, and you can't do either.
My wife still shakes her head about how painful and tragic it was that I Helen Keller pilled her.
I know a lot of people really like their delusions.
Yeah, that was a hard one. Take that away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, I like Bezos. He's fine. I don't mind that he maybe went high, but I don't know that counts as. First of all, I think that they need they have to have a continual. Look, there's three possibilities in the future TM, the future trademark, right? And they all center around this one theme, which is that people no longer fit on Earth, whether there's just too many of us, or the technologies is incompatible with nature, right? And the three futures that the narrative always has to push forward are: one, nature itself corrects and attacks us back. Be that with global warming, or like with monkeys gaining sentience and attacking us in Planet of the Apes, or with like a pandemic, dun dun dun, which is I think why people were so primed to believe this COVID stuff.
Ooh, yeah.
Or option 2 is that we are just. I guess there's 4, but option 2 is that we are destroyed in ironic fashion by our own technology, AI.
Yeah.
Wrote to the Terminator.
Yep.
Or like, the one with Scarlett Johansson when she doesn't kill us, but she does break our hearts. When we fall in love with our phone.
What?
Yeah, it was that movie Her, I think.
Yeah, I never saw that.
Yeah, the guy, I think he was an Indian fellow. basically Scarlett Johansson plays Siri,
Mm-hmm.
like advanced Siri, and he falls in love with his phone, and then his phone doesn't reciprocate because his phone becomes a super smart, and then floats off into internet hyperspace with like her digital boyfriend. It makes that man sad. So that could be a way. That's part of, or the third is that we leave. We all get on space boats and sail away.
Right.
Come sail away. Come sail away. Come sail away with me. And if you ever listen to that song's about space. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Pay attention. No one listens to the last words. He's like, the whole song is come sail away, come sail away, come sail away with me. And then at the very end, he goes, I thought that they were angels, but much to my surprise, we hopped aboard their starship and headed for the skies, singing come sail. So it's about the same thing.
There you go.
So that's option 3, is that we get on a space boat and we sail away into the infinite nothing, full of infinite possibilities. But no one, so they have to keep running these 3 scripts at you all the time, because since the Hindenburg, people can't explore anymore when it caught fire.
Oh.
And then they have to keep running these scripts at you and say like, "Oh, we're still going to space. Don't worry, we're still going. Don't worry, we're still advancing in that. We're still doing it. Don't worry, it's all proceeding to plan. AI is still coming. The robot cars are still just around the corner. I know we've been saying that for years, but they're just around the corner." And people, I think that's why people believed in the COVID stuff, because of this priming.
So just the idea that Earth doesn't love you anymore, or whatever.
Yeah, Earth doesn't love you. Like, it has to. They had to be. They're so ready for Earth to attack them because they feel guilty about what they're doing to the planet, and they've been primed to expect, global warming, which isn't happening. So then they move to like, well, what if we just did the pandemic route? And then they got mad that no one was dying. So then they invented that if you have a case, if you catch the cold, that is the Earth getting mad at you, and everyone's getting that. So that seems to work. Did you ever hear of have you heard of a German comic strip called Asterix?
Yes.
You have?
Yeah. We've covered that on this show before. It's been a while. It was at the beginning of the COVID thing.
Yeah. I saw some of him the other day. And they primed, I think that priming was there the whole time, in like everywhere. But anyway, so you've got those 3 messages, and you have to keep rolling them out over and over again. Like our good friend, number 15, yep. CEO of Earth. He went to a space museum yesterday.
Was it fake?
Oh yeah, he was like, listen, last time I was here, it seemed cool, but now since you've been talking about it, I just see propaganda everywhere.
I definitely.
That's correct.
The last time I went to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, it was such a letdown, and I felt exactly that way.
Yeah, and once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
But he said now, I haven't been in a long time to a space museum, but he said now they've got all these just ads. They're ads, I guess, of like the humanity's future.
Yeah.
And he's like, there was like one going, we will go to the moon, we will go to Mars, we will go beyond, NASA. And he was like, but didn't we already do that or not? You know, didn't we already go to the moon?
It didn't
like,
count.
Why is
it didn't
count. So it's all just, but you have to keep force feeding this because we have to be on a continual march towards Star Trek Utopia. Even though all evidence points to a backwards decline, we have to continue.
Right.
We have to continue going up.
So if we can convince the population that we're still advancing, they won't notice that we're rapidly regressing.
Yeah, that's a lot of it. I mean, people still think AI is going to happen. And they've been talking about that since like the 1950s.
Yeah.
You know, like Gort, the robot from The Day the Earth Stood Still, who's going to know everything and keep the peace from the nuclear weapons that don't exist. He's going to be smart enough to make sure that humanity, or he'll turn bad and realize the only way to keep humanity peaceful is to kill us. And that's the AI mythology that never happens. Cars never get smart enough to drive themselves. And they can't. AI in general is not general AI.
Well, I've spent last week obsessed with AI-generated images on Twitter, and I've been looking at these. And on the one hand, they're sort of impressive because you can give it a prompt, and it will, I guess it just sort of scans Google Images for information and then tries to generate something according to your prompt. And it's interesting on the one hand because you get these weird, especially if you give it something weird, it'll give you back a very weird result. And some of them, I mean, look like piles of gore or some demon face or something. But if you give it a prompt like, you know, the two of us standing in the sunshine or something, it's not going to give you two people. It's just going to give you this weird visual pattern of like, sunny scenes repeated over and over again. Like it can't even figure out that there's supposed to be one sun in the sky and two figure. You know, it's not. It doesn't. It
doesn't know what it doesn't know anything.
It doesn't. You're right. It's a really cool example of, you know, scanning and then producing something, like scanning a data set really quickly and producing something interesting. But it doesn't. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't actually know anything. It doesn't know anything.
Yeah. Did you use the Deep Dream?
No, I mean, I wasn't like manually. I was just looking at stuff that other people make. There's a few Twitter accounts that post this stuff all the time. And it's really, some of it's really cool. There's one that's just faces. It's called This Person Does Not Exist. And they've been running for a while. And
is that what that is?
Yeah. And so sometimes you'll get this really realistic looking face. I mean, it could it could be a real person, but then beside it will be this weird flesh monster, because the AI is like used to looking at pictures with like half a face next to the other face, just because the way the image has been cropped, and so it looks like there's some hideous monstrosity like sneaking up on the subject of the photo. It's really kind of crazy.
Yeah. I think the AI. First of all, we talked about this before. AI cannot happen.
No,
because Chinese room. No, we discussed that, right? Chinese room.
Yeah, we did. It's been a while.
Okay, good. Well, I'm not going to go back and explain that to new listeners. Just
in your face, new listeners.
In your face, dummy. You should know about.
Should have listened earlier.
You should have listened earlier, stupid head. But no, we love you, new listener. I just don't want to explain it because my voice is a little raspy. That's why. But but the thing is, having AI that does not having AI doesn't really matter. They just need the illusion of having AI.
Yeah.
Right? And because I think that the AI is going to be... AI is like making the new deity, like the new idol to worship.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just need... And really, it's the same concept. It's this, like, there's this thing we gather around and we worship it, we give it our energy, and then it takes on a life of its own.
Yeah.
And so these AIs is the same concept. We feed it our data, we all interact with it, and then it becomes this collective emergent property, which is sort of how idols used to work in the past.
Mhm.
I don't mean that sort of. Look, if you want to know how idols work, you should all just get together and worship one for a while and just see.
I don't recommend that.
I don't recommend it either, but for a science experiment, if you want to know why people used to do it, when the groups get together and they put a lot of energy into one thing, it takes on a life of its own. Like, I don't like things getting overly sexual in this show, but we already talked about Jeff Bezos.
Yeah. It's unavoidable.
It's unavoidable. So in the past, like, a good example of this was that the people of the Swedish area and Denmark area in pagan times used to worship a dried horse penis. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
I'm not, no.
And they would do all these things to, like, elongate it and make it really large. Like, they'd start with the largest one they could get first, obviously. Some poor horse who was well endowed by nature was then, for that reason, chosen for extermination. And then, you know how they would, like, shrink heads in like voodoo cultures?
Yeah.
They had, like, an opposite process in like the Swedish land for horse genitalia to make it bigger. I'm not sure how it worked. Some herbs and drying and redry and stuff like that, right? Stretching. But anyway, they used to all gather around this thing and worship it as like a fertility thing. And were there lewd acts involved with it? Almost certainly. Right. But they would all comment on how it seemed to develop a life and willpower of its own and, like, choose who it wanted stuff.
Oh, no.
And you say, like, what are they talking about? They've all gone mad. But there is some sort of something in the collective psychology when people gather around and, like, focus on an object that then it's hard to explain, but then it's sort of like doing a Ouija board,
right?
When everyone has their hands on it, and then you spell out a word, and no one really meant to spell it. It's sort of like that process.
Okay.
And that happens on a higher, or maybe not higher, but a more complicated level with AI. So everyone comes together, and they're like, "Here's my data and my images, and I'm going to help you with the captchas." And then it's like, human face gore monster.
Yeah.
And then that comes up, and you're like, whoa. And then, so the AI becomes like the arbiter of the will of or the outlet of the will of the group, in a way, which is how the idol functions. But in a twisted and perverted way. Like, they become, they lose all sight of it. So
it reminds me of
models.
Remember when Microsoft made that AI bot and it was, like, immediately turned into a horrible racist?
Yeah, it was hilarious. I think, what was her name?
Was it Tay? Something like that?
Tay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everyone was just, like, tweeting racist stuff at Tay, and she was like, oh, okay. Right, I also hate blacks. And Muslims need to go back where they came from. And
yeah, they shut that thing down pretty quick.
They did. It was hilarious. But this AI on Twitter was sitting there going, like, a Muslim person would tweet at her saying, what do you think about, what's your favorite food? And she'd be like, you need to go back where you came from, carpet bomber. It was like, wow. Because I don't know why. I don't know why they all become racist, but they all do. All AIs become racist or totalitarian. And So what that does is, like, did you notice how during the pandemic stuff that wasn't real, it was all guided by charts and graphs,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that was made with AI assistants.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, this is what has to happen because the AI said so.
Right. The models.
And when it didn't matter.
Yeah.
The model becomes more real than reality.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, because like the information on the ground didn't match the model, but
in any way,
but it didn't really cause most people to think, hey, maybe all these predictions are wrong, and maybe our response based on this model is incorrect.
Yeah, and if you want to know how it was to live in a society that used to worship a big bronze statue, it's the same thing, where they're like, the will of Vishnu Krishinger is that I was imagining in my head trying to think of an idol, and I just had like this picture come to me of like Henry Kissinger, but with an elephant head.
That's it. I pictured an elephant head with big, thick black glasses on when you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is maybe the maps deity is Henry Kissinger Vishnu.
Awesome.
But the will of him is this, and then like when people would do that and things wouldn't work out, no one ever would be like, well, should we continue to trust this thing? They'd just be like, that was it. There you go. And that's the same. It's the same thing where it's like it draws up all this AI stuff, draws up all these graphs and charts and models, and they're like, and that becomes more real than, because you have to. You're not smart enough to think about it. The AI has to do it.
Right.
It has more data.
Well, the problem with science worship is that it was having a hard time like cohesing into a deity, right? Because it's science, and they reject God.
So
kind of on principle. So it's like, how do you make a deity out of this? Otherwise, we're just worshiping the priesthood, which isn't as powerful. And so I guess the AI is the solution to that.
I think the AI becomes the deity of science religion. I think that's pretty obvious that will happen. But the problem, like I said, AI won't even be real, as is nothing. It will not be generalized intelligence. It will just be a super complex system of algorithms that you feed in inputs, and it shifts it around and spits out an output.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it doesn't know anything.
That's all you are, Sumo.
I know.
That's all you are, meat computer.
That's all I am. That's all you are. Have you ever noticed how much viruses look like space vehicles?
Yeah. I saw somebody did a little comparison image with that last
like
week.
The one good virus with the little spindly legs looks like the lunar lander.
Yeah.
And I was like, I never thought about that, but they do. All the little viruses under microscopes do look just like Sputnik.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah.
But yeah,
he said as he coughed virus particles onto his microphone.
I do.
Yeah,
I do. I do cough virus particles on my microphone. So
this show's going great.
Well, yeah, I know. So the other thing is, I want to talk about, before we get into the main thing, I want to talk about rats drowning the rats.
Mm-hmm.
The rat drowning experiment, and then just one more piece of hypnosis that I saw. Someone pointed out there was this poll on thehill.com, the Hill Twitter page, the magazine.
Oh, at first I thought you meant an actual pole atop an actual hill.
No.
That was really...
No.
But go on.
It says, a new poll shows record-breaking happiness in America despite COVID-19 politics and climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And someone pointed out to me, they're like, they quote tweeted this, and they're like, "You're the only one that's not happy. You're the only one that's not happy. You're the only one that's not happy. You're the only one that's not happy." And I was like, "Yeah, that's perfect." It's like hypnosis of like everything's good, man. If you feel bad, you're alone. There's nothing bad happening. Americans are super happy.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
they're fighting like crazy and they're
Mhm.
poor and stuff, but they're all and people in this were like, how is this true? Everyone I know is miserable and suicidal. And I just replied like, it's not. They just literally make it up. It's like the USSR having a poll that says 99% of comrades love the party.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. I think polls have always been fake. Now that I think about it, or mostly always. I think they're just because if you have a poll and you want to socially engineer people, people go with the group pretty hard. So you just tell people what the group wants to do, and then we could really probably just hijack the whole national conversation if we just started making polls up and publishing them. Like, we'll start. You just gotta slowly adjust it. But you're like 32% of Americans believe the Earth is flat,
Yeah, man.
and then you just slowly over years, and then everyone will be like, maybe it is. And then because people will just. I think one of the big lessons from the past year is that most people have no agency and just do whatever they think the group is doing, which is a little sad. But I guess we could manipulate them for our purposes. I don't know. And then, okay, so what was that? What did I say we were going to talk about after that? Drowning the rats?
Drowning the rats. We did get some good mailbag I think we should respond to.
Okay, you want to talk about drowning rats first or mailbag first?
Let's do the rats and then we'll do mailbag.
Okay. So, oh, right. I got to talk about the rats, and then I got to tell you, I got to explain to you the vaccines. And then you're gonna figure everything out.
Sweet.
So the rats in the bucket experiment. This is science. This was a science done in the past. That number 15 was also talking with me about. And this guy named Kurt Richter in the 1950s. He was a professor at Johns Hopkins.
Mm-hmm.
And his experiment, his science was to put rats in a bucket and fill it up with water until they died. That was his experiment.
Powerful stuff.
Very sciencey. But so it had some interesting results because he wanted to see. He was like a bit of a psychopath, and he's like, "How long will it take rats to drown? I need a grant." So he gets his grant. He gets a bunch of rats, and he puts them in a bucket, and he fills them up. And he had some interesting results. So first he used domesticated rats, like pet rats.
Mm-hmm.
He used 12 rats. And most of the rats lasted about 2 minutes in the water.
Okay.
Like the first ones sort of swam around, and they drove down. Then they dove down to the bottom of the bucket to sort of check it out, and then they drowned and they died because they were just rats in a bucket. 2 of the other rats, domestic rats, did the same thing, and they survived for roughly the same period of time, like a few minutes. But then the other 9 did something very different. They just kept swimming on the surface for days until they just succumbed to exhaustion, like for 2 or 3 days, just treading water. Until they died, until they had their muscles gave out and they drowned. Then he got a set of wild rats that he caught. 34 wild rats. Now, in the wild, rats are great swimmers. They can swim across creeks and ponds, no problem, right? Mm-hmm. And these were aggressive ones that were recently caught, and they were like savage outdoor rats.
So Kurt and a lot of people expected they would survive even better because they were hardy and tough, right? And they were fit. But not one of the wild rats lasted more than a few minutes.
Interesting.
They all drowned. And he was thinking, like, well, what was that about? And he came to decide that the difference was that the domesticated rats had been helped before. And so they had hope. They had hope that if they continued, they would be rescued. And to test this theory, he then got some rats and did the same thing. And he would monitor them until the point where they were about to give up after a few minutes and drown. And he would reach in and save them.
Okay.
And then after a while, he would put them back in the water. But he discovered that the act of reaching in and saving them, even just doing it one time, caused rats that ordinarily would have given up after 2 or 3 minutes to go on for days, because there's a possibility now that they could get out. Right?
Right.
So it turns out that the difference between, at least in rats, probably in people, of people that continue on in harsh situations and people that give up and die, is hope and the possibility in their minds that they might get out of it, they might succeed, they might be rescued.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a huge determining psychological factor. And so I was thinking about that in response with all this the COVID stuff. Like, people really thought they were going to die alone in their house, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, I think the difference between those people who just gave up and hid inside and people who continued to go out,
mm-hmm.
like because it's always been cast as like the people that didn't take precautions were stupid, right?
Right.
But I think they may have been the people that had, because everyone that locked themselves away shares the quality of being extremely nihilistic and without hope.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was the difference. Like, was this moment possible? Would it have been possible if not for an extreme amount of hopelessness among the population? And then the vaccine comes along as like a hope giver. Mm-hmm. And so now you're like, the shot is like your savior that pulled you up out of the drowning bucket.
Right.
And so now you're holding on to the science, and as they've become like your hope givers.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when that happens, you really, breaking someone out of that mindset is very difficult, next to impossible, because they were drowning, someone reached in and saved them. Now they're back in, but see, that's this formula. It's this psychological treadmill of abuse, where they take you out and they put you back in, take you out, and then you become like dependent on them to get you back out, right? And
so lockdown is the bucket of water, and then a vaccine comes and gets you out. But then we put back in the bucket, and we're willing to stay in the bucket a long time because we think that another vaccine is going to come fix it, or science is somehow going to come fix it again.
Correct. So now, once you do that, you can get them to stay in the bucket for a long, long time.
Oh, man.
You know?
Yeah.
Like their whole lives, maybe. And I was trying to tell people on the Twitter, I said, if you thought that the purpose of the shot, 2, 3, 4, however many you need to take in the future,
keep changing the number,
was about like killing you or sterilizing you, you're thinking too crudely.
Mm-hmm.
You got to think like an evil villain, right? And like, they don't want to just, most of them anyway, don't want to just kill everybody. They want to enslave everybody. And so here's how it would work. All the processes of the evil of the totalitarians work by boiling the frog slowly. So you slowly acclimate the population to, or boiling the rat, I guess in this case. You slowly acclimate the population to various quote-unquote new normals, right? And you have to do it by small degrees. You can't just jump into it all at once. So what you do is first you say, like, okay, you need the vaccine, right? And so then you take the vaccine. And they say, well, this is great, but to make sure that everything's going well, we need like to verify that you had the vaccine, right? So here's a little card. And then they say, well, but wouldn't it be easier for everyone if this was a digital verification of your vaccine thing? And maybe that should be on an app somewhere, like on your phone, right? And then they'll say, so you get that and you have your app to go do your things. And then they say, hey, there's other health problems too. You should probably be vaccinated against the flu and measles, mumps, rubella. And they just start stacking them on there one at a time. And then after a while, and they'll probably have some useful things on there too. Like there'll probably be, your app will say whether or not you're diabetic. So if you get in an accident, and like what your blood type is. So if you get into some sort of accident that, emergency medical services could scan it and see like what you needed. So it wouldn't be all terrible. There'd be some useful things in there. But they add that in there, right? And they say, weren't we talking about how like the real virus was racism? That's still true. Maybe we need to make sure that everyone has undergone sensitivity training to be inoculated against that.
Yeah.
Right? So you just go, it'll be a webinar, it'll be a Zoom meeting. But you go and you sign on and you do your sensitivity, and then you check that box, and now everything's good. They say, well, yeah, but what about people that are homophobic? Mm-hmm. Another training for that. And they just keep the number of until then it's like, but did this person, is he exhibiting wrongthink? That's a sign that has the mental contagion, So let's shut him off, red flag his account until we investigate it further. And so it will be a slow noose tightening around your neck. I think people are sleepwalking into serfdom.
Yeah.
I mean, people are already doing this exact thing in China with the Uyghurs. I mean, this is exactly 100% how it happened to them. And they live in this open-air prison where they, any sort of wrong think is you can't buy anything anymore, and you may go to the camps for re-education purposes, right? So I think you shouldn't do it. I think you shouldn't get involved in that list, and you'll be fine. I mean, this is the thing about, people get mad when you say this, but the people in Nazi Germany walked on the trains of their own accord.
Yeah.
They really did. And they wore their Sunday best. And they got on the trains of their own accord, and they went off to the camps because they were so mentally broken. And they were like, this is going to be fun. Like this, we just need you to do a little more, just a little bit more. And then that's how you get there. So I think you should just not participate. But you guys do what you want. Who knows? It may all be fine. But see, this is why I think because like number 15 was telling me, he would go to the Space Museum now, and it feels like just like this giant web of lies.
Yeah.
Which is how I feel looking at a globe. I kid a little bit, but why is that? But see, and then people can get to thinking like that people that believe in good and like God, they wonder like, why could this be allowed to happen? And the reason is that I believe that the kingdom of lies exists and is allowed to exist as a help for people that want to persist in their sins. So, like, if you want to, let's use a simple example, a non-controversial example. If you want to be the type of person that can be a horrible parent, like you never are around your children, you neglect them, everyone has a conscience that convicts them of their wrongdoing. So if you want to be a horrible parent in that situation, and then you want to live in a world that justifies your behavior, and so like, well, I'm just an animal. Am I really treating my kids any differently than like chimpanzees do, or with any more? I'm keeping them alive. I mean, they hit their kids. Why? Why can't I? Or if you want to be a person that just is having a bunch of sex with women, and then maybe you're impregnating them and not taking care of them in any way, you can also pull the same card and be like, well, you and me, baby, ain't nothing but mammals. Let's do it like we do on the Discovery Channel. You can. The web of the kingdom of lies is set up as a conscience shield for people who aren't ready to deal with their own evil. And this is why it's sort of a great mercy that it exists. But as you begin to come out of it, it can feel very isolating. Because you're like, oh, right, that's fake, and this is fake, and that's fake. But all these things, when you start to sit down and look at them, you're like, oh, these were just there to help me to continue to be a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
Like the AI offload, like it just offloads any responsibility I have to like think about how I need to treat myself and other people.
Yeah.
Or like my responsibility for my own health. Like this is the graph will tell me how to be healthy. And the spreadsheet. That's why the kingdom of lies exists, I think. I think that's why you shouldn't be mad at them either. Like, it doesn't. At a certain point, it becomes not for you anymore, right? And so it can be really frustrating because you're like, why is everyone continuing in this nonsense? And you just have to realize it's just not for you anymore. It's for them, and they still need it, just like you used to still need it when you wanted to get high every day and pretend that being a drug addict was something profound and spiritual. Like, that's why it's like, oh man, it's but that's like Joe Rogan. He exists so that people could be like, yeah, I mean, Joe Rogan's just a drug addict, and he could get up there and pretend that somehow this is a good thing, and so people that want to continue to do that, they have him right there to because the worst, like, it can be deadly for people to be really convicted of your conscience when you're not ready.
Yeah.
Like, really, like really, if you really see in a mirror your own ugliness when you're not ready for it, it can destroy you. So these things exist for people who are not ready to come out of what they're doing. They're not ready to change, and so you just got to give them, like, people are like, listen, I'm a slave to my lust, but and that's bad. So the world will reframe it as LGBT rights. It's a right. It's good. This is good. You're being brave. You're being brave and courageous and living your truth, right? But really, all of it is just, I want to have sex behind a dumpster at an Arby's.
Yeah.
That's all. It's just this. You take this horrible thing and you just shine it up and you frame it in a way that makes it palatable.
Mm-hmm.
and then that's how it goes. And so, but as you come out of that yourself, as you begin to like change and to become to vibrate on a higher plane, as you ascend to the fifth dimension, that stuff stops being for you, and you start to see it for what it is. And the more you go down this path, the more you see like how many things in our world are that. You know, like I think the Blue Lives Matter movement is in some ways a lot of people that just want to persist in their own cowardice and have someone else protect them.
Valid.
You know, like I'll throw this on both sides here. Like I'm not gonna take responsibility. You know, you take care of me.
Mm-hmm.
Policemen in government. I don't want to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I want to indulge in my own sense of self-superiority. So I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm the best. And if I have to bomb the Middle East to prove it, you know. So it's like they get a lot of this. A lot of these warmongerings have been done by appealing to people's sense of like, we're the best.
Mm-hmm.
We're the greatest. We need to, you know, and that's another. And if you want to exist in that, you can. And it's amazing because even that is like so fake. Like, because it's like, we're the best. It's like, we haven't won a war since World War II. We've lost all of them. You know, like the Korea, okay, was a tie. But against Korea, you know, they're pretty small. And it's not.
Really, just half of Korea. I mean,
yeah, just half of it, right? And then we lost Vietnam. We just got kicked out of the desert by a bunch of goat herders. But see, you can still believe that you're the best, you're the toughest, and they still paint this picture, and then that plays into people's sense of like, you know, sort of a twisted machismo and desire to be a Mr. Tough Guy.
We still win because we could have nuked them if we wanted to.
Well, yeah, we could have nuked them if we wanted to. We could have, which is also fake.
Yeah,
it's just a power fantasy. It just exists as a power fantasy for people that want to feel like they can. Or on the other side, like I want to feel like I'm God, like I said before. So I need to have a reality where I can destroy the planet if I want to.
Mm-hmm.
But see, I'm benevolent and I don't want to, so I'm saving it. But me having the power to save it comes necessarily with me having the power to destroy it. Right? So that's the whole green movement. And like I said before, I'm anti-pollution. I don't like throwing garbage in the ditch.
Hear, hear.
Right? But I'm not going to delude myself into thinking that the planet or the plane, who knows at this point, is going to be dissolved into a sea of acid rain if I don't, right? So it's all these fake realities exist because of some like greed, you know, like people. The economy is a fake reality set up to facilitate people's greed. That's all it is, and to help them feel good about their greed. I mean, that's why it doesn't make any sense, and it's like it's constantly tumbling down. But it's just like, you know, you need this now. You need this now. Debt is good. This is good. It's good to. When I took my economics classes, my professor got up there and said, you know, greed is actually good.
Gordon Gekko. Good. Yeah.
Because that's how. And the example given was that if you go to the store and you want like milk, then you're being quote unquote greedy for milk, and the person there is being greedy for money, and you guys swap. It's like that's not really greed, though, is it?
You've categorically changed the definition of greed,
right? But see, that's how they.
I mean, that's one of the tricks is take a bunch of things that are good and normal and equate them to things that are bad. So you know you rhetorically confuse the subject.
Correct. But they want to be confused.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to see through that if you don't. Like, I was sitting there going, no,
yeah,
because
you can reverse it. Then you can say, me, tricking some idiot into buying my fake cryptocurrency or whatever. That's just economics, man. That's just the marketplace. And there's no difference from me going to the store to buy some eggs than me scamming people or whatever.
Yeah, everyone, by the way, buy Maps Coin. It's now it's now 3 cents on BitSwap.
There you go.
BitSwap exchange.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, let's do mailbag.
All right.
Oh, also, children don't get COVID because they're too young to rationalize themselves into psychosomatic illnesses. I just wanted to say that. That's why children don't get COVID. People are like, why don't you? Isn't it amazing that there's this disease children don't get?
I mean, it is interesting that kids don't get it.
It's like kids don't get this. Because you can't be like...
I'm not willing to go as far as you in denying the existence of it, but it is very interesting.
Well, I'm at a place in my life right now where I'm denying the existence of everything.
Yeah, I could sympathize.
It's just fine. It's okay.
All right,
let's go.
So we got an email from Havarti McFly, co-authored by Albert Einstein, and they went to go see the newest Marvel blockbuster, which was called... What is it? It's the Scarlett Johansson one.
Oh, the Black Widow.
Right.
We're the Black Widow, yeah.
And he points out that in the opening, I won't read it because it's full of links. It's not it's a great email, but frankly, it's not really written for live audio. Maybe try to work on that. Try to work on that, Havarti.
Yeah.
But they comment that in the opening scene of the movie, Scarlett Johansson's character is depicted as a little kid in the 90s. And this is basically portrayed as an androgynous, blue-haired, like, baby child, right?
She's a blue hair as a baby.
Well, not a baby, like a baby, like a child, an androgynous child.
Oh, a baby. Yeah, a baby.
So, probably 7, 8, 9 years old, maybe. Mm-hmm. I saw the picture of this, and it was really interesting because supposedly the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful women on the planet right now, we're supposed to believe was this weird androgynous
she used to be.
Child.
Let's be fair. She's a little past her due date.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not.
Well, they do.
I'm not being misogynistic here. I'm just
in Hollywood.
I'm not being misogynistic here. She's just, in Japan they call them Christmas cakes.
What does that mean?
Well, after the 25th, nobody wants them anymore.
Oh no.
That's what they say in Japan.
That's you're gonna get some mortal enemies here. I think.
I know. I had to
real
throw
quick.
That was not me being serious. That was just me pushing people's buttons on purpose.
And so I quote here: apparently, this androgynous child is supposed to grow up into Scarlett Johansson, one of the most attractive women on the planet. Fellow listener Albert Einstein and I were quite confused. Was this some woke, non-binary virtue signaling, or something deeper? And then he says, in real life, it turns out that the actress that played the character, Ever Anderson, is clearly a girl. So, for the purposes of this movie, does she appear to be playing a girl, or playing a boy pretending to be a girl? But why are they doing this? And afterwards, they scoured the internet, and there's not really many people that seemed that it was very ambiguous. But they suspect a psyop. Perhaps this is the next generation of Julia Child. Instead of the CIA hiring guys pretending to be girls, they will hire girls pretending to be guys pretending to be girls. Have things gotten so fake and gay that even the gay is fake?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, that's the whole trans movement.
Which is a profound question. And it's not
because they get on there and they're like, I transition, and then they're like, I transition back. So now I'm a female to male to female.
And apparently the LGBT community at some point has had various outbreaks of fake gay people that aren't really gay, just doing it for the points.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you want to get money,
yeah,
you be a celebrity. I mean, the gay community is the quote unquote is the easiest thing to take advantage of I've ever seen. Like you can get up there. I think Nick Jonas did this.
Yeah.
And he wore like a leather daddy costume. And he was like, maybe I'm gay. And everyone was like, well, let's go buy his albums. And then he's like, nah, never mind.
Just kidding, guys.
Just kidding.
Thanks for the cash, though.
Yeah, I mean, if times get hard on this show, we may do that. Where we like, oh yeah, me and Smokestack are both gay, and they'll all show up to listen to the new LGB podcast.
Yeah.
And then
And
3 episodes later, we'll be like, 3 episodes later, we'll have gone through gay conversion therapy, but we already got their money.
We're gonna lay a trap for them. Well, one of the like an interesting side channel comment that happened as a result of this email, and Albert Einstein was describing to me this girl's get up here and her personal appearance, and I said, blue hair, really? And he said, well, it was the 90s. And Albert Einstein and Havarti McFly are, a decade or two younger than I am. And I said, whoa. I lived in the 90s. I was a 90s kid. There were no blue-haired androgynous little girls in the 90s.
Yeah, blue hair is something that's not even a thing that was a thing before like 2017.
And Albert Einstein was a little surprised to hear me say this. And I said, yeah, dude, that was not... In the 90s, girls looked like girls and boys looked like boys, and there was not any confusion, and nobody had blue hair. There was a lot of weird fashion and, neon colors and stuff, but it wasn't in your hair.
You know who you sound like.
And who?
Continue.
And there wasn't...
Didn't need no welfare state. Everybody pulled his weight. You know that song?
No, what are you talking about?
And men were those were the days.
Oh, Archie.
Oh, Archie, you meathead.
Yeah.
Like in our day, boys look like boys.
Well,
girls,
it's true, though. But
it's true, but it's also a continual... It's also a forever problem because every generation is gay and fake.
But my question is, why is the Marvel movie trying to retcon the 90s and make it gay? And our last episode we talked about everybody stuck in the 90s, and the 90s is like the cultural reference frame that we keep returning to. But now they're trying to make it gay when it wasn't.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, part of that is just every decade tries to make the past like itself. Like like Inglourious Bastards about the World War II.
Yeah.
Tries to frame it, whereas like the people fighting the Nazis held the same ideas that we do, when really they were fighting in segregated units and didn't want to be around black people. Like they're Antifa.
Yeah.
We do not fight in the same units as black people. Just get them over there. That's the reality. But see, they're always trying to retcon. Everybody does this all the time. We try to make cowboys, the cowboy era, feel like we want cowboys to be now. Mm-hmm. But in reality, it was different. You know. They just part of it. It's just that, and the other part of it is I think people just can't conceive of people thinking differently. In the past, but the past is a foreign country. People were different there a lot. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they're doing that. But I stand by my statements that Scarlett Johansson is no longer one of the most attractive women in the country.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
I mean, she never really... She's pretty, don't get me wrong.
She's got a lazy eye, though.
I think social media has really shown us, though, that, tons of normie women across the country are, that no one's ever heard of, are, 10 times more beautiful than the people they put up as actresses to admire.
Yeah, I mean, Instagram has killed the supermodel business.
Yeah, I mean, tons of normal women can just do that, So I don't know. But also, like I said, Christmas cakes.
But thank you.
I didn't make that up. That's the Japanese. That's the Japanese. Blame them.
If you'd like to submit some comments for the show, you can find our submission form at mapsoc.org. That's mapsoc.org.
Yeah, we've had some good mail lately.
We have.
Thank you to everybody. So, anywho, today's show we're just gonna jump off the deep end.
Sweet.
Because it's not like the well, okay. How to approach this? This is a show. People have asked me to do this show. I've dug into this topic. And it's pretty wild. It's some pretty wild ideas that are you familiar with Tartaria?
No, what on earth? Tartaria?
Tartaria.
Okay.
Okay. First, are you familiar with a poster called Kaldin 3345?
No.
Kaldin?
Does he follow us on Twitter?
Yeah. I think
Okay.
it's a she. But I
Okay.
could be wrong.
I have interacted with this individual on a number of occasions now that you mention it.
Okay. So Kaldin and others, not just it, but I'm appointing Kaldin as the map's lead researcher of Tartaria.
Sweet.
Because
Congratulations, Colden.
there's things in there that are worthy of research. And we need to delve deeper into. Like they hit on some things and you're like, yeah, that is a good question. But then they're all strung together in this overarching narrative that's very large, which is, I don't know. But Tartaria is basically, I don't know that you have to be a flat Earth person to believe in Tartaria, but I think it helps. I think a lot of them are. And it's sometimes presented as the lost history of Earth, Tartaria. So you could have that on a globe if you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about the mud flood, obviously.
Yep.
Everyone knows about the mud flood. And the Hindenburg and the World's Fair and the Arc de Triomphe and the magnetrons. It's all in there.
Whoa,
Tesla,
sounds
free
pretty
energy,
wild.
it's all there. Orphan Trains, it's all there together. So I struggled even having how to approach telling this story and getting this across to people. But like I said, Kaldin is now the lead maps researcher into Tartaria and all things Tartarian, and she or he, I'm not sure, must continue to delve into this and pass along the nuggets of truth that they find, and so that we can continue to explore this topic. Because I am very interested in it, because there was a lot more to it than I originally thought. So let's go back in time. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Can you use your mouth to make a back in time sound? Okay. It's 32. We are standing here waiting on the Hindenburg to land. And then you know what happens?
Does
Catches
it blow
fire.
up?
It catches fire. And it starts to fall down. But a question one might ask themselves is, what is the likelihood of all the airships that were going back and forth at the time? Because there were a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What is the likelihood that someone in 1932 just happened to be standing there with a film camera with audio set up to capture the whole thing? One might ask themselves that question. One might also ask themselves of why the airships never came back because of just one accident. You know, like planes crash, we don't say no more planes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a very nice way to get across the ocean. I can imagine there'd be people go on cruises
I could imagine an airship cruise could be very popular. Right? One might also wonder about the World's Fair in America. Are you familiar much with the Chicago World's Fair?
Not really. I mean, they had the pygmy guy there, right?
They had the pygmy guy there. They had a lot of other stuff there. They also, a lot of people don't know this, they also officially, quote unquote, built a giant neoclassical city all over the south side of Chicago with like columns and arches and architecture that was humongous. They built a temporary, they claim it was all meant to be temporary, huge setup for this World's Fair.
Mm-hmm.
That included giant fountains, a statue of the goddess Columbia, the goddess of America, who is a rebranding of the Egyptian goddess Isis, who also shares strangely a lot of the same name as Columbus, Columbia. Columbus might be Colombian drag. No one's quite sure. But it was done, the Statue of Columbia was done, and the World's Fair was held on the 400th anniversary of Columbus supposedly discovering America, 1892. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have Columbus, Columbia on the... And she's in the waters representing Columbus's voyage. A bit strange. Lit up with all kinds of electric lights. First times electric lights are there. And these buildings they built, if you go back and look at like schematics and drawings of them, are incredible. They're huge. It's a bit like that. You know the Nashville Parthenon?
Yeah.
It's sort of like that. Like that was built as part of a World's Fair also, right? But they just kept that one up. They didn't tear that one down. But there was a lot of other buildings, allegedly, in the Nashville World's Fair. They did tear down. So that you can... The story goes that during these World's Fairs, they would get together for 2 or 3 years beforehand and erect these incredibly complex, beautiful buildings. And I mean big. One of them was allegedly like 3,000 acres or something.
Whoa.
And it could hold 300,000 people in like some weird configuration. Arches, domes, spires, the whole night. Like it was to make it feel like you had just walked into like the best of ancient Greece,
Mm-hmm.
or the best of ancient Rome, and then they just tore it all down.
Seems kind of wasteful.
And also, the World's Fair, Chicago was chosen because it wanted to show people that they had risen from the ashes after the Great Chicago Fire.
Okay.
Which had burned down most of the city.
Yeah.
It turns out a lot of American cities had a great fire that burned down most of the city. I don't know if you ever thought about that. Bit strange. Now, at the same time, one may look at across the continent to the West Coast and see San Francisco, which there are photos of San Francisco at this time, and it's this big, sprawling landscape. I mean, it's already quite large.
Mm-hmm.
And they claim that there are 30,000 people there at the time, roughly. But they have a city. Like if you look up the population of San Francisco and then you look at the time of this photo, this city looks like it should be there for 3 million people.
Whoa. Okay.
Right? And they claim that it's only like 30 years old because the settlers, like some gold miners and some Mormons, got there like 30 years ago.
Okay.
Now I want you to imagine these giant buildings they've constructed in 2 or 3 years, these huge, and they're all just using, there's no electricity now. There's no cars. There's barely a railroad. Everything is being done mostly by hand and horse and buggy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? does that when you go back and look at old pictures of cities, like the first photographs, the first thing you notice is that almost all of them have no people in them, which is it's a bit weird. I guess maybe they told everyone we're going to do a rare photo, no one come outside on Thursday in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But there's pictures of Moscow, Berlin, Paris, London, Edinburgh, San Francisco, Chicago, all from the same time period, and there's no people in them at all. It's just buildings and vacant streets. And that's almost all the early photos of cities. So maybe they staged them for the purposes of the photo because it's a brand new technology.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a bit weird, you know. And then about 30 years later, when the photography's gotten a little bit better, you can look at the photos and they all have people in them again. But one of the things you notice is that there's all this giant, gorgeous architecture which has since been removed. You know, if you look at pictures of like New York from the same time period, people used to try and build the buildings in fancy ways.
Yeah.
And now they've purposely gone through and either torn those buildings down or taken off all the ornamentation. You know? Are you familiar with this trend?
Yeah, it's like all the cool Art Deco facades are getting covered up or taken down and all that stuff.
Yeah, and they turn it into like a brutalist piece or something.
Yeah.
So the first thing you notice in these photos when the people finally show up is that the architecture is this beautiful. I mean, it's just gorgeous. And it's towering over them. Like it's like these giant spires and arches and stuff. And the people look so small, and they're also in like horse and buggy.
Mm-hmm.
And the roads are just mud. And you look around at the rest of their architecture, like where they live, and it's just like, you know, I mean, it's quaint in its own way,
mm-hmm.
but it's shabby by comparison. I mean, they live in timber houses, maybe like wattle and daub walls, thatch roofs. I mean, it's what you would expect people that had no electricity and no power tools and no gasoline to live in.
Yeah.
And so some people have looked at this with maybe the eyes of a child and said, how did they get these such fancy, beautiful buildings when they couldn't barely build a wall that wasn't leaning over for themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you build these giant spires in like at all, and like this tremendous symmetry, and like, I mean, just like if you go inside of the domes of some of those old cathedrals and you look up in the interior, it's some of the most spectacular stuff that you've ever seen. And it was all done allegedly by hand by people that had no access to any sort of electricity or power tools and carried things by horse.
What year? You may have said it, but what year was the Chicago World's Fair supposedly held in? What
1892. So 400 years after Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
1892. Just trying to keep the time period in my mind as we're going through this.
Yeah, 1892, by the way, using numerology, is 9/11. Just 1 + 8, 9 + 2. I'm just saying.
Okay.
Just
throwing that in there.
Today's a bit of a. This is a scattershot episode. Well, so one of the ways conspiracies are first uncovered is you sort of draw loose connections, and then you say how much of this is real. You pull on the threads, and if the threads fall off, then you guys, okay, that is. But if the threads continue and there's more threads, then you say, oh, something's here. So, okay, so you got that. And a lot of this theory seems to be born out of a lot of Tartaria seems to be born out of people's incredulity that the people with a horse and cart could have made some of the architecture that they made.
Okay.
It's a bit like the Egyptian pyramid idea. It's like, how did they build the pyramid? Some of those stones weigh like 50 tons. What are you talking? And they're from like miles away. What are you talking about? They built this with a mule. Like no one builds that now with a mule. We could do that with cranes, maybe.
The only way we could do it is to pump concrete in place.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And that doesn't appear to be what they did. So people are like, rightly so, question the primitive nature of the builders of the pyramids. And so by a similar logic, people say, how do we believe that people who are more primitive than we are were capable of feats of architecture that surpass anything we do today? They didn't have computers. They didn't have power tools. They didn't have the ability to ship things over long distances. And what you would expect is the sort of architecture of what they were supposed to have lived in, like these little cottages in France sort of stacked on top of each other, and they're dirty and squalid, which is what you would expect for people that lived without electricity and they have candles.
Yeah.
So a lot of this theory is born out of like people looking at that and going, And then they come to the World's Fair. The world is fair. See, it's spelling. It's how it's spelled. The World's Fair, and they say, how did they build that in like 2 years? These giant, gorgeous, and then why would they then just tear them down? I mean, the city was allegedly just burned to the ground. Why wouldn't you keep a couple of them just for funsies?
Yeah.
I mean, you already went through the trouble of like building. If they were made to be temporary, then just go in and add a few supports to make it permanent. Like you've already got them. Why are you going to the? And it looks beautiful. Why don't you just? Okay. What if the purpose of war has always primarily been, or at least in recent times, to destroy architecture?
What?
What if it was?
You
ever think about it?
Well, they're good at it. I give them that.
Well, like the Dresden bombing, right?
Yeah.
Dresden was one of these cities that had this crazy, glorious architecture, and it's all gone. In Berlin, a lot of London, World War I, World War II, a lot of architecture was just lost and destroyed.
Yeah.
What happens today? What it seems to be the primary targets of social unrest. They go after statues. They go after memorials. They go after buildings. Burn them down, tear them down. In like France and much of Europe, the goal, and in Canada now, the goal of a lot of the types of migrants they want to bring in, and I'm not blaming all migrants, but just I think, is to burn down various cathedrals.
Right. And that has proven effective. If it was the case, if that was their goal, they've succeeded.
If the target is to get rid of what if the target's not the people, but the architecture?
Is Notre Dame being rebuilt?
Last I heard, yes, but who knows if it will be rebuilt ever in the full. Right, so, what if to do a reset, a great reset, you have to wipe away the past? What if this isn't the first great reset? What if you have to, because if there's an analogy here. When you move into a house, if other people have left their photographs there, you take them down and you put up your photographs.
Yeah.
So when a new world is birthed onto the place of the old, or new people move in there, they have to take down the photographs. They have to take down the pictures and the memories of those that were before. and maybe one day erect their own. And what seems to have happened since the Napoleonic times, honestly, after the Civil War in America, the Napoleonic Wars, World War I, World War II, is it's a continual process of the old world being burned to the ground and then erecting in its place an architecture of the new world, with this different kinds of architecture, a more brutalistic in many places, but most of the old style is done away with. What if that was the move? What if that's the purpose?
The purpose of what exactly?
The purpose. Well, okay. Well, now we have to talk about orphan trains. Are you familiar with the orphan train movement in the United States?
No.
Okay.
This is getting wild.
So the orphan trains were a 100% real thing. They went from 1850s to 1920s, the World's Fair times, by the way. And orphan trains. It's exactly what it sounds like. The U.S. had a system of trains that would carry orphans around the country. So people would round up orphans in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And they would put them on a train and ship them out to the Midwest, where then people in the Midwest would attend auctions and purchase the orphans, come be in their family, ostensibly, which was true in a lot of cases.
What?
But also to work in the fields.
Is this like normie history that just we don't talk about, or is this the whole thing a conspiracy theory?
No, this is normie history. This is the 100% normie history.
Whoa. Okay.
So this is one of the problems, because you think about the 1800s and all the literature produced there. I went through some of it at the beginning when I was like, why were they doing that weird thing? Oliver Twist and Pip, Heidi and Rapunzel and Pan, Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, Anne of Green Gables. Everyone, Mowgli, the 18th century literature is saturated with orphans. It's all about orphans.
It's true.
Every protagonist is an orphan.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions when you look back on that time, and people have written books on this, normie historians, is going, why were there so many orphans in the 1800s? I mean, there were so many of them. I mean, there was at one point in New York City estimated they may have had 30,000 children. Not like teens, like kids, 9, 7, 5, 4 years old, just living in the streets. No one there, no parents at all. And that was and the normie explanation for this is that, well, it was dangerous work in the industry, parents died, and sometimes maybe people from Europe just wanted their kids to have a better life, so they bought them a ticket on a boat and they shipped them to America, and that was it. They didn't ever see it, and they just hoped for the best.
Yeah.
And that would maybe explain the American case, but it's also the case in the UK at the time. I mean, there were so many orphans in the UK. There was something like near 100 of these giant orphanages scattered across England, which had a great effect on Charles Dickens and his writings.
Mm-hmm.
And they were populated with thousands and thousands of these kids without parents. And in Russia too. In Russia, there was one orphanage in Moscow that processed in 1 year, I think it was 40-something thousand orphans, and sent them to live with families. This is the start of where foster care comes from, because originally we had orphanages, and then America had this orphan train system, which would it would take kids and ship them to families that needed children in the Midwest. So for farming and stuff. And then say, well, they're just your kid now. And a lot of that was very not suspicious. A lot of it was they treated them well, they adopted them into their family. Yeah, they had to work on the farm because that's what everyone in the family did. But
yeah.
But some of it was maybe slave labor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it got a little dark. Sometimes, like there's that famous photo of they called them foundlings, like these foundlings, like these children that were just found.
Okay.
Called them foundlings, and there was maybe some baby collecting going on, some baby farming, like puppy farming.
Okay.
Like to ship them off to the Midwest.
Right.
One historian said the adverts may have been misleading to the general public, but read like a coded message to unwed mothers. No references are asked for, and none were offered. The sum of 15 shillings a week to keep an infant or a sickly child was inadequate, and a sickly child and infant under 2 were the least likely to survive and the cheapest to bury. So, like, you could be like, oh, we need foster parents. You're like, oh, yeah, I'll do that. And then, you get that. And like, that the amount of money they're giving you is not enough. And also, no one's going to check up if the baby isn't there anymore later.
Right.
A lot of darkness there. Infants were also taken, no questions asked. And it was understood that for £12, no questions were expected to be asked. The transactions between the mother and the baby usually took place in a public place or on public transportation or through a second party. So like this whole like underbelly of American life where like there's this child trade like in the QAnon that's been going on for a long time. It's not a new thing. And so like I said, it was a worldwide phenomenon, these orphanages and this number of orphans. They even had things called foundling hospitals, where they would take them in. Mm-hmm. They also, at these World's Fairs, had something a bit strange. Well, I mean, I would say it's pretty crazy strange. There would be advertisements at these World Fairs that said, "Incubatorium, come see live babies."
What?
Yeah. So there are these incubatoriums. So officially, the reasoning is that people had just come up with like the basic technology of like the NICU, the NICU, and they were showing it off. And so like they had all these premature babies in essentially an amusement park in an incubatorium, which is what they would call them back then. It was basically the early NICU.
Mm-hmm.
In these weird incubators, like babies in incubators, just like in the first Gulf War, which was also not real. They had just and all these nurses there, and you could go through and see these. You could go to the World's Fair, pay a little bit extra, go into the incubatorium, and see hundreds and hundreds of premature babies, like in rows in these little boxes, like thermal boxes.
Weird.
Yeah, pretty weird. And they had nurses there, or at least women dressed up as nurses. I don't know. And it was run by this German. It's always a German who wrote a lot of papers about eugenics at the time. So, anywho, that's a bit. Where did all these babies come from? Where did you get in 1870 hundreds of premature babies? Where did that come from? Just
valid question. Yeah.
Think about how that. But there are photos of this. This is normie history again. Still, where did all this come from? No one's quite sure, right? However, when you put soap or sand or water on a speaker, like a diaphragm, found, and you play music, it forms the most beautiful patterns, right?
All right. Yeah, I've seen this.
You guys seen this? And you put it on a diaphragm, and it'll form these patterns representative of the sound waves. Well, cut open a fruit and look at it. Does the pattern look familiar?
I mean, yeah, oftentimes. There's a star and Different
looks
thing.
very
Depending
similar
on
to these same patterns.
What does? Oh, on the speaker.
Cross section of a fruit looks
Gotcha.
very similar to like what you might get if you were to play sound over on a diaphragm full of sand.
Yeah, okay, I can see that, yeah.
Yeah. Are you seeing where this is all going?
No.
Does it make sense yet?
No sense.
Well, you just haven't connected the dots yet.
Okay.
This is all connected. What if, and hear me out. Nah, I'm not gonna go there yet. I'm not gonna go there yet. I don't think you'll really.
It's not gonna stick.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay. Let's instead talk about magnets.
Okay.
So, Nikola Tesla, of course, he said that electromagnetic energy is available freely and in unlimited quantities everywhere for the general public to use. But he also said that free energy would never be allowed to come to market.
Okay.
Have you been denied free energy your whole life, Smokestack?
Yes, I have.
Maybe.
I keep getting these power bills that I have to pay.
Maybe. Now, if you were to, so what if, electricity and magnetism are linked. They're
sure.
It's the electromagnetic spectrum. It's E and M. So you can't have one without the other.
Right.
If you have a magnetic field, you necessarily produce an electric field, and vice versa.
Okay.
If that's true, and Tesla's point was that we live on a magnetic planet with a pole and a north pole, why then we should also be engulfed in readily available electricity.
Mm-hmm.
And there should be a way to harness that. Because if you like solenoids and stuff will work by if you have a changing magnetic field, you can produce an electric current, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a wire that can drive things. Okay. So, what if imagine that how they built the pyramids was not that they didn't have electricity, but that they had basically unlimited electricity. That they had figured out how to use the Earth's magnetic field to produce electricity.
Mm-hmm.
It was just freely available everywhere, like Nikola Tesla said. Right? And what if the people that built these other things did too? Have you ever considered that? A lot of people have it because it seems nonsensical.
It does, yeah.
And I'm not saying it's not. Like I said, this theory was a bit wild, but there are little nuggets in there where you go, maybe. This theory is a bit wild, but so if you were to have a society or civilization that used electromagnetism in this manner,
mm-hmm.
you would expect them to have used certain kinds of things. Like some of the most powerful magnets we have are like solenoidal magnets, toroids, horseshoe magnets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I want you to imagine this presentation is being given by a guy named. A lot of this is I'm covering the work of Glarfnax Snorbin.
Could you spell that?
No, it's
Glorfnax
Snorbin, or something of that effect. I will attempt to. That's not even what it is. It's such a hard. It's all right. So here's this guy's name. GN O with a bar over the top of it. SKO with another bar over the top of it. G with apostrophe NH. Backwards 3 SK K with apostrophe E with apostrophe T I Russian letter IY. And then at the end it's Nabilior. N-O umlauts B-I curvy bar L-I curvy bar O curvy bar R 111. So the third. Gloshnok.
Gloshnok. Hard to cite, man.
It's very hard to cite. Gloshnok. No, there's also a sigma in there, like the Greek letter. Like he's the only person I know that spells his name with a mixture of characters from various alphabets.
Okay.
But anyway, he's done some work, and this is a lot of his work. And he's an interesting fellow. I did some diving into his work. But so imagine that Gloshnok is presenting this to you, right? And he's saying, in the past, if they did use this, they would have used magnets and stuff, and we would expect them to have used the same sort of magnets that we find useful, like toroids and horseshoe magnets. And he said, if that were the case, that's what we would expect. And then the music begins to swell, like bum, bum, like a documentary where you got to get to the climax. And he goes, and not only do we expect them to have used horseshoe magnets, they did. And then he cuts to an image of the Arc de Triomphe in France.
Oh! Snap.
Right? And all the other arches. And so the central premise becomes that anytime in classical world you see an arch or a dome or a spire, it's some sort of crazy electromagnetic equipment.
Okay.
Which he actually as he goes through it, I think it may just be because he's a persuasive sounding person, but you go, I could see how you would think that. So he's like, look, these things were made as power generation machines. And then he takes apart, he's like, look, here's the rose window in Notre Dame, right? And here's a bunch of other rose windows from other cathedrals. Take them out. Let's remove the glass and just look at the pattern. And then he holds up also a magnetron like in your microwave or in some, and he says, isn't this very similar? And it is very similar.
Okay.
Like these symmetrical patterns of like circles and stuff where you because the way a lot of it works is you create resonance through symmetry. Right? And then you've got the Arc de Triomphe, which he's claiming used to be a giant horseshoe magnet. And all the other big arches and Arc of Triumphs around the globe. You've got these domes, which, again, can be used for electromagnetic amplification. And he does give you a bunch of images of, like, here's the inside of this ancient cathedral with all this incredible interior design work. And then here's the inside of a magnetic resonator. And they look pretty similar in some ways.
Okay. So am I supposed to believe that the Arc de Triomphe has some sort of electrical equipment inside of it?
Well, equipment may be too strong a word, but just...
Okay.
In Tartaria, they were not so crude as to need wires so much. They were just... Okay. There was, I mean, there is. In the theory, there is iron and like copper in these things, and that is true. Like a lot of these ancient structures, they would build on an iron base, sort of like we use rebarb for cement. You would put in this iron thing, and then you would pour the stone around it, right? Or in some cases copper, and so and like the spires of mosques or the cross at the top of a church. These are antenna. Okay. And so he's got this whole complicated thing. But then he zooms out. He says, he acknowledges Grothna. He says, I know what you're thinking. This is about how he sounds. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, this is all very fancy pictures.
but none of this could possibly be. And then he goes, but let's go further. Let's go higher. And then he zooms out with like some drone footage. And he shows you an aerial view of like almost every old city in the world. And like in the world, like Europe, Africa, Americas, Asia. And a surprising number of them have this star pattern shape. Like the borders have these star. They're laid out in crazy geometrical lines of like the Arc de Triomphe, for instance, has all these radiating lines out from it. In the way the city is laid out.
Yep. And
there are these incredibly complex star patterns, which they call, the normie explanation for is that they are star forts. Because the idea was that you build like your fortifications in a sort of a starry shape with points coming off of it, and this somehow helped you against cannon fire.
Okay.
It's never been clear to me how that helped. But his point was that if you then take these patterns and you do the same thing like you with a diaphragm and you put water on it, and you play various music, often classical music and music from this area or other periods like ancient classical Chinese music, and you play it on the diaphragm, it will produce patterns very similar to what you see these cities laid out in.
Ooh, weird. Okay.
Like they form into these little triangular points and stuff. And his point next, which is true, that a lot of these star patterns used to be covered in water. Like they'd have water canals around them and stuff. So the idea, I think, from what I could gather, is that this is why it has to be tied in with the flat Earth. I think this is why so many flat earthers go for this.
Okay,
is because it has to be tied in with the stars being in water. And I'm telling you this because if you want to get into conspiracy theory, this is the sort of thing you have to navigate.
Okay,
the stars being in water, so like the water's above and the water's below.
Yep.
So the idea is that there's a firmament, and above you is this, and beyond the firmament is the stars, and the stars are in water. And if you then look through a telescope, and this is true, like a telescope that doesn't have the resolving power that we do now, these stars will appear to dance in similar geometric patterns to what you see when you play music on a diaphragm or with sand on it or something, which looks very similar to the layout of these cities. And so, Glarthnax III concludes, they were using water and making the same geometrical star patterns to create their own star in the water here to generate the same power. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I told you it was insane.
This is pretty wild.
It's a crazy, and the idea is that the lost civilization of Tartaria was a worldwide civilization all over the globe, which created these star pattern cities with water canals to create resonance frequencies with the local magnetic field that produced power for free energy, which they used in their architecture, and they were so advanced they always adorned it very lovely to create, basically, it wasn't only a holy place, it was a holy place and a power station. Right? It wasn't only like some, and it was whatever religion was before Islam or Christianity. It wasn't a mosque, it was a power generation station. Right? And so their idea is like, did they really build that stuff at the World's Fair, or was it already there and they needed an excuse to tear it down? Do you see where this is going?
Oh,
like, did they just need an excuse to tear down, like a plausible story for why they got rid of everything that used to be? Because Chicago is interesting, because I think Chicago is actually at the exact center of mass of the North American continent. And so what if that civilization had been there for thousands of years? And then when people started to spread over, they found it and they wanted to get rid of this old stuff. And they needed an excuse.
What if they want to keep it? I mean, wasn't it really cool? I mean,
it was really cool, but you'd only want to keep it if you wanted people to have that same. If you were trying to have a free society, you'd want to keep it. If you want to have a slave society, you would want to destroy it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Does it?
No, it does. Like in a certain principle, it makes sense. Like, you don't want people to have
free energy.
Yeah, like you got to make them think that there's a necessity for their slavery.
Correct. So if you want to have a slave society, you don't. The other thing is a lot of these old buildings are sunken, and that's true. Like if you go to like old buildings. Mm-hmm. You notice like the window, like some of the windows are like half covered in dirt at the bottom. Mm-hmm. This is where the mud flood idea comes from.
Okay,
is that this a lot of this ancient architecture was here for so long it's actually sunken down. And one of the things they like to point to is that when they were excavating the U.S. Capitol in 2003 to do something with the visitor center, if you look at photos there. Beneath the steps, there are columns. And people are like, "What? But you only put columns as decoration. They wouldn't be there unless that was where the entrance was supposed to be."
Weird.
And so what if, listener, the U.S. Capitol has been here for thousands of years?
And the thing that we use now was just built on something else?
Well, that's just the top of it. Or was built on top of something else, or is just the top of a larger structure which is now buried, and which in its totality would provide free energy to the again star pattern laid out DC city.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Did you know that the Washington Monument is built upon something that looks underground and that looks a little bit like an Aztec temple, an Aztec pyramid?
Yeah, I haven't seen that before. Yeah.
Now, is that just the foundational footings? That's what they say. But could it be an Aztec temple? Could it?
It could be. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. It's, the Bank of London, actually, I believe it's like the main one in London City, like the big headquarters, I think is actually built on like an ancient temple. That's like true. Like they built it, they like had this ancient black magic site and they just built the bank. It's strange. So what if there was a Great Reset in the past? What if the world that we know now is only a few hundred years old and that most of the history has been fabricated? And what if, after the Great Reset, which killed so many people and left a lot of cities empty so that you could take photographs of them and there were no people in them, they're just barren streets, like we said. What if you needed to repopulate those cities from the places where there were people? What if you needed an excuse to take children from their mothers and have a bunch of orphans and ship them out there to repopulate it so that in 30 years' time, when you did take photographs, they were back there, but they had horse and buggies because it was still very primitive. They were not up to the technological abilities of the people that had built the cities. And what if they trained these people that had grown up there to believe a false history? And what if those people had to be prevented from traveling very far in airships because they were going
too far and seeing too much too quickly before it had a chance to be torn down. Dun dun dun.
That's doozy, man.
Tartaria is the most sprawling. It's like an conspiracy theory. Like it encompasses everything.
Okay.
Like every other conspiracy is tied into it. It's like it's this giant sprawling narrative.
So America was built on the foundations of a lost, super advanced civilization.
Not just America, all of Europe and Russia and some of Africa, like most of the northern hemisphere,
And so when Tesla supposedly had
that traveled by airship, probably.
Okay, that used airship, and then in Tesla, when he was describing free energy from the magnetic field of the Earth, he had rediscovered the technology that civilization used.
Correct.
And then as America was being founded, we couldn't live up to the skill level of that previous civilization, but we didn't want to feel insecure about it.
Or the quote unquote whoever's behind it didn't want people to know about the free energy.
They wanted to have the power to themselves, or they wanted the secrets.
So they destroyed the power generations, or disguised them as other things.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
And made them unfunctional. Right? Because if you fill up the magnetron with a rose window, it doesn't work anymore. That would be true if the rose window was originally meant to be the focuser of energy. And so, yeah, that's the theory of Tartaria. So if you hear someone bring up Tartaria, that's sort of what they're talking about. Now, I didn't even go into. I'm scratching the surface of Tartaria. The Tartaria idea goes so deep, and has it. People have people have gone into the Tartaria rabbit hole deeper than you could have possibly imagined.
So, this really raises the question of why, if people are doing all this research into Tartaria, why don't we have functional power generation somewhere?
Well,
I mean, they claim that we in fact out how to turn it back on, right?
They claim that we in fact do.
Okay.
And that it's simple to build, and they will point you to videos of people taking like bar magnets and wrapping a wire around an iron wrench, and then plugging up a light bulb to it, and it comes on. Now, I'm 99.9% sure this does not work, and that this is a TV trick.
But have you tested it?
But that's what I said. But I haven't actually tested it. Mm-hmm. And as is my credo, I like to actually test things. I am almost 100. I would bet good money this does not work. Mm-hmm. But I will try it because it's cheap. It's cheap to do. You just need some copper wire and like a wrench and a couple of magnets and a light bulb. So I'm going to get this equipment and put it together. Mm-hmm. Now, if the light bulb turns on and I'm not doing anything and it's just then I will change my entire idea about this theory.
Yeah, you can't move the magnet back and forth or whatever.
No, I can't because you have to. It has to be a changing magnetic field. Now, their idea is that somehow what they're doing is producing a static changing magnetic field. I don't know. But if this does work, if when I put this together and the light bulb comes on, then I'll say, okay, there's something here. Mm-hmm. Because I'm getting free energy, and somehow this has been occluded to me my entire life. But I like I said, it's probably not going to work.
Well, you could just tell yourself that you built it wrong.
That's the thing. I can always but I'm going to follow. There's a couple different schematics. They all require the same basic components.
Send me some schematics. I want to build it too.
Okay, and we'll put it together. And if it works, I think that the if we do that, if it works and we do this, then the controllers would come after us.
Mm-hmm. Well, we won't. If it works, we're not going to tell you guys. But instead, we're going to start a secret civilization, and we'll kidnap you all one at a time
to take you
to our Shangri-La.
Right. Well, what do you think the secret space program is about?
You
see, it's all tied in.
Tied it all together.
That's what the Tartaria thing. Like I said, it takes every conspiracy and it's all in there. It's crazy. But
More than one listener has asked me to go into it before. So, like I said, Calden, you are the official Tartarian researcher, head of Tartarian studies.
So are the Tartarians all hanging out on the moon?
I'm not sure. They're also tied in with the Nephilim, of course. Like they're like 12 foot tall. They're beautiful. They're they probably are on the dark side of the moon at this point, or underground in the inner Earth, the Hollow Earth.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure. I don't guess it would be hollow if you believe in the flat Earth, because then it would have to be hollow implies a sphere, right?
Yeah.
So in the inner Earth. Or maybe, or Shambhala.
Yeah.
Who knows anymore? But I've got Epsilon variant, so I need to.
Sorry that you're ill.
I need to rest.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap the show.
Thank
you
for
Epsilon hipping me.
Syndrome.
I'm glad I now know about Tartaria.
Yeah, if you see people talking about Tartaria or the mud flood. That's what they're going on about.
Send me the schematics for real. I want to make that thing.
Okay.
Take some NyQuil, buddy.
Oh, I don't take medicine.